Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tank review, a day late and $1 short. Actually, this might be a month late and $12 short or something like that. But I did a quick review on the Carriage, the Type 5 Carriage, which is the new Japanese Tier 8 Premium TD casemate, as you can see it right here in the garage. Did a quick review on it, didn't actually have the tank, got the tank eventually, and was able to play, finally got around to anyway, being able to play 20 games in it, which has kind of been my limit for making a review on a tank. I like to play at least 10, but 20 is even mo better. So I've knocked out 20 battles in this, and I quite like it. In fact, it's doing very well. I think it's probably, if you wanted to skip the rest of the review, it is absolutely a top 10 TD, and more than likely a top 5, which is very interesting considering it's a casemate TD. So a lot of the top TDs, minus things like maybe the TS5, have turrets or are fast and some other things like that. But this guy is kind of your classic beefy casemate hard-hitting TD, and it does quite well. But it's got a few things going for it, which are maybe outside of the casemate TD envelope just a little bit, perhaps, maybe. Let's take a look at the vehicle details and see what the wargaming folks are saying about it. From 1942, it's a versatile tank destroyer, in case you didn't know. Whatever that means. From 1942, Japanese engineers took an active interest in German tanks as well as their components. A large amount of materials were accumulated, which served as a basis for creating their own projects, one of which was the Type 5 Carriage heavy tank destroyer. That's about all you've got. Most of these Japanese tank destroyers, I think some of the lower tier ones may have been built. A lot of the higher tier stuff was just concepts or plans and such like that. But here it is in the game. It's a Tier 8 tank. Let's take a look at a couple things on it. First of all, you can see the shape of it. Not much angling. The upper plate's okay, relatively thin. It is very thick. That 220 number, we'll talk about it, is right here on the front edge of the casemate. But unfortunately, it is not very angled. So you don't get much more than the 220 or 200, whatever it is. 220, right, for the whole armor. We'll take a look at the armor profile in just a minute. Otherwise, it's a boxy, kind of Ferdinand-esque looking tank right here. Not much else to say about it. A large lower plate kind of thing. Big gun. Hits hard for about 500 alpha. Let's take a look at the armor profile right now. So we come over here, look at tanks.gg. This is what I'm talking about. This is versus its own gun, which has 240 something pen, 252 pen. So that's going to look green against 252 pen. But think about that for a minute. It's 220 at that angle right there, 227 effective. So you can see that the angling doesn't give it much help right there. Even this plate's at 179, but it's only 50 to start with. At least it has some angle right there. What that means is the tier 7s and especially tier 6s that don't have good pen with gold are going to struggle against it. But tier 8s and above, once you press 2, it's pretty easy to get above 220, 229, 227 is what it says right there. So if you run into something with a standard, even a heavy at tier 8, standard pen around 200 to 210, you got a good chance of getting some bounces right there. As soon as they dab 2 or any of the TDs that have good penetration and such, it turns out it doesn't have a whole lot of armor. Now the matlet is actually pretty good right there. Even although it doesn't side scrape, I guess you have something like that, although there's a weird angle right here going on that sort of defeats some of the side scraping capability. It's indifferent to that anyway because its azimuth isn't great. We'll take a look at that in just a minute on what that looks like with its stats. How has it been doing so far? That's a great question. Let's answer that question. Here it is. DPG, it is sitting at about 5th, 6th, math in public. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey. Win rate is number 1. Interesting. Frags, it's number 1. Assist, it does drop down a bit. In fact, it's way down here. Hit percentage is surprisingly lower than I thought it might be. We're going to take a look at its gun. It's actually pretty nice. I like that they now have pen percentage. Isn't that interesting here? I just noticed that, actually. Sitting at 75. That's really nice. Spots are going to be lower. Even though it's decently quick, it's not amazingly quick. And blocked damage is, it's no TS5 or turtle, right? So it's way down here where its armor's not super holding up. But its DPG and its frags and its win rate, which is number 1, are all very nice. So your big ticket items on the offensive capability for this thing It's doing very well. It's really up there. That's why I say it's probably top 5, easily top 10 in terms of TDs. As you look at this list, you can see they're all, especially at win rate and DPG, it's all premium stuff, and it does compare very nicely against the various, how shall we say, legends, things like the TS5, the G-Sor, the Vipera, which is relatively new as well, the Shiptick, the Su-130, the Scorpion. I mean, these are all well-known good TDs, and it's topping. Now, it's new. People take a while to get used to it, learning how to defeat it. Some of those may come down a little bit, but you know, it just jumped right up to the top. So I don't see it losing a whole lot of ground. It's certainly not going to drop out of the top 10. Very nice in terms of all that stuff. All right, let's take a look next here, since I figure out where that button is. Let's do a comparison amongst a couple tanks that I have picked. The TS5, which is kind of the class of the class right there. I threw in the ISU 152K because of the heavy-hitting gun, because the Carriage also has a relatively, anyway, heavy-hitting gun, some similarities there. And then a faster casemate TD that's a little bit more stealthy and quick, able to reposition, although at the same time, the Carriage is much faster than a TS5. So kind of sitting in between a couple of these dudes. 500 alpha on the gun. You can see the TS5 at 400 and the ISU at 750. KPZ at 390, so it lives in between that big, fearsome 750 alpha gun the ISU carries around and the 400 of the faster-firing TS5 and KPZ. We come down here, the penetration is decent at 252. We'll look at the gold in a minute, so it's comparable to these, although not quite as nice as that big ISU penetration right there. As far as the gun goes, the gun loading is at 12.75. Rate of fire, relatively low, not nearly as bad as the ISU. If we jump down to DPM, it's comparable, 2,353. It's not the 2,900 that the TS5 has, which is really one of the big selling points of the TS5. It just lobs rounds downrange quickly. How does it do that? It does that because its reload is relatively quick at 8.15, whereas the KPZ is 11. The ISU with that long reload at 18, and this guy lives in between the TS5 and the ISU at 12.75, comparable to, say, a Canon Panzer 105 right there. As far as the gun handling goes, it's pretty nice, and this is where this thing starts to shine. It's a bit of an all-rounder in that it has some armor. We already discussed some of the ins and outs on that, and it has some speed, but it's not as good in speed as a Canon and Jagdpanzer, and it's not as good in armor as a TS5. But then you look at the gun and go, wow, that's really close to the Canon at 0.31. 0.33 is quite respectable, especially for the amount of DPM that it's getting and the 500 alpha. You got to like that. Also, it doesn't hurt too much on the aiming time of 1.92. It does have 12 degrees field of regard. I talked about that a bit earlier. Not bad, actually, not quite as tight as the TS5 and not as good as the Canon. And it has -7, which is the best gun depression other than the Canon at -8 there. Starting to get into that really usable regime, not as painful as a TS5 or an ISU at -5. That comes out to a pretty good gun handling Carriage, all right? So it's a decent, so far anyway, as far as the gun handling goes, it's a pretty good weapons platform. A couple of things going on for it. Let's talk about survivability. It's not as survivable as the TS5. It doesn't have the 1,500 hit points as at 1,250, which is okay. The whole armor we discussed, it looks good at 220. That is good, but there's not much angling. Not a whole lot you can do to make that better. Even if you go back slope hold down, you don't get a whole lot out of that because the angling just isn't good, and you only have -7 gun depression to work with to begin with there, so not fantastic. You can do some of the backing away, get an angle thing, and get some lucky bounces on things like that. Problem with that on a casemate, though, is as you back out, now you start to expose those flat sides. Bit of a crapshoot at times. The sight is not great at 50, and that's quite the weakness. Although for triple overmatch, you're going to need 150 millimeters, 151 millimeters or more on that, so it's not too bad, but it is pretty lame overall. So here's where it gets a little bit more interesting for me on the speed. It can do 40, so it's not 70 like the Canon, and it's not zinging around, but it's not the snail's pace of a TS5. if you chuck a turbo on there, which is what I did, I put a Bounty turbo on that thing, it's quite respectable actually and feels fairly sprightly. It can get around where it needs to be. It can relocate, not quite as nice as a Canonen, but certainly better than a TS5. So it's not as one-dimensional as a TS5 is, where you go to a flank and that's where you go, more or less, unless you have a really long match and have a lot of time. It can move around a bit better than TS5. Obviously, it doesn't have the survivability of the armor that a TS5 does. So it's a give or take. 380 on the view range. You can't quite see the other guys there, but they're 370, 350, and 360. So it does top out at view range. You got to like that. Now, who cares about signal range? And the camo is, it's not quite Canon and Panzer, but it's at 14. In fact, it's about the worst of all these. Why? Because it's so tall. That's where it loses out. So what is this telling me on all of these stats? If I just take a look at this, remember these stats are always 100% cruise, no skills, no food, no equipment, just a baseline tank with a 100% crew, which brings a little bit of a bonus in there to the stats. It tells me you've got a good gun platform with a heavy-hitting gun, good penetration, a decent gold round, and some armor, especially against same to lower tier tanks. And the thing that's really nice about it is the accuracy of the gun, because you can pull off some shots with this thing that you won't get away with on things like, say, the ISU or even the TS5. Although the TS5 likes to get close to its work. So it's not quite an assault TD, but it can be put into that role if need be. But it also can snipe pretty decently. It's actually a decent sniper for hanging out in the back. And then when you do need to push, you have those options, because there's a little bit of armor that can kind of keep you into it, and it's got the speed to make that move as well. So kind of an all-rounder, and I think the results of this tank are bearing some of that out. All right. So here's my setup for the Carriage. I am calling it the carry machine. I am almost full tryhard. I may have to actually move some food over there just to try that out. But I've got a Bounty Rammer, a Bounty IA, Bounty Turbo. I got to tell you guys, I'm starting to believe in the IA over just about anything. I don't think this tank can use a vert stab though, so it's probably not an argument anyway for this particular tank. Let's see if we got. Pretty sure there's no vert stab. It is a TD. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So no vert stab. I do have a second setup based on my field mods. I don't think I've actually done anything with it yet. I'll have to think about that one. There may be a argument for more of a city setup. Maybe drop the turbo and put hardening on it or something like that if you want to try a little bit more assault stuff. But I don't think I would go that hard into the assault TD on this. This is really just a more flexible contingency assault TD, really. Or late game when a little bit of maneuverability and moving around the map become primary or more important. The gold round, as I said, is 298, or I said I would tell you about it. It's 298, not quite topping 300. Not bad, though. It is an APHE, whatever the heck that means. But basically, it's an AP gold round. I ran regular kits and a fire extinguisher. Like I said, I'll probably drop some food on this because I've got 80 games to go for the 100 Battle Challenge on this tank. Taking a look at the crew, this is actually very interesting. It is a 6-person crew. You'll see I got Tragic in there. I got the Orc dude. He's as close to a dinosaur as I could find in my barracks, so I chucked him in there. And then we've got some other crew. I think these were award crews that I had sitting in the barracks. So they're pretty good. We're sitting at, what, 3 and working on the 4th, and the Orc guy's got 4 working on his 5th. So a decent crew that's got all the stuff you need. Whatever's going to happen with crew 2.0, you can see that, you know, this crew's all ready to roll with that. The nice thing about this crew, which used to be a really kind of a bad thing, is you do have one of each position. You got commander, gunner, driver, radio operator, and 2 loaders, which means you're going to be able to put a lot of good skills on these guys. We'll see if that's how it remains in terms of after the whole Crew 2.0 is out, but from what we can tell right now anyway, the 5 and 6 and 4-man crews are looking to have a pretty good advantage over the smaller ones. Very interesting. It may be a situation where having a separate radio operator is now desirable. Very strange. Very strange. Okay, so that's how I've got that thing set up. Let's go ahead and take a look at how I did so far. I've actually had a really good run with it so far. I do not expect this to stay at 70% win rate, especially the last 3 or 4 battles. I can remember at least 2 that I had no business winning. I essentially did a whole lot of nothing, and we ended up winning. In fact, I was sitting at 2,500 average damage until about 15 battles, and then it just dropped because of a couple of those tomato battles that I had. But I am sitting at 70% with 50% survival. Hits are decent at 73.13, damage ratio 2.76, destruction 3-1. And the armor use is in the usable category. So again, as I say every time, around 0.5, it's situational armor. Interesting, in the case of a casemate TD like this, situational probably means a situation of lower tier, taking on lower tier and bullying them. Vice, maybe with a heavy, you would say, oh, it's probably got, or a medium, it's probably got a really good turret, and you're able to use that turret in situations. All right, so 0.43 is not terrible, but it's not great. 2,189 average damage, and my assistance is fairly low at 289. Best battle I had is 4,487 damage and 6 kills, and I'm averaging over 1,000 experience. Which, if I'm averaging over 1,000 experience in tier 8s and above, that's about where I want to be. Close to 1,000 is great. Over 1,000 is fantastic. That's, for me, that's kind of where I want to be with the tank. All right, guys, let's take a look at some gameplay. All right, first example I've got for you, we are here on Himmelsdorf. And for some reason, this T-26 just decides to come in, so we'll just punish him with a little slap right there. 480, you gotta love that. All of a sudden, we have put nobody down on the road down there, and we have purples showing up. So the Tiger 2 is not really paying attention. Neither is the JT. They're thinking, hey, I've won our flank. Let's just push in here, right? We got the flank. Push in. We got these guys. Neither one of them is paying attention to me. This guy's on fire, running across. We'll try to shoot him and track him, but it doesn't quite work. Not as easy to do these days with all the various things that can stop people from getting tracked or modules being damaged. So hanging out right here. I almost get pushed off by the Barosk. I don't know what that guy was doing. Trying to push me off, I think. Renegade's in there, the Tiger 2. There's the Burr. This other Tiger 2 comes around the corner, not paying attention. Tried to track him, but didn't quite get into the wheel. We'll back out of that. Just a real comfortable gun, guys. I mean, I was aimed in, but you'll notice as I scooted forward, I didn't lose a whole bunch of bloom on that thing. Very comfortable gun. I'm thinking about heading down the hill to take on the Tiger 2. Looks like the Burr's thinking about it as well. The guys up on the hill are taking care of business up there as well, and we're kind of winning on every front at this point. We'll push on in down the hill. Baras goes after the Tiger 2 and nukes him, just blasts him in the face. And we'll keep on pushing down here. And now this is what I wanted to show you on this one in particular is, look at the speed of this thing. Pretty decent for a casemate. I kind of zinging along. Now I was going downhill, and that's very helpful. We'll come around here and we'll find this guy, look for a track maybe, and get a little assist damage. Doesn't quite work. I'm expecting the Burr to kill him because he's got 2 shots. And now I'm just going to start trying to hunt down some damage, man. 2,416. The Rompel Stomp is in effect. And that's what's nice about a little bit of mobility on a tank like this. Heavy hitting gun, okay armor, and also some mobility for these kinds of games. I feel bad about scraping him off, but I knew exactly what he was trying to do. The problem is he actually gets the last lap because he gets around on these guys better than I can. He ends up getting the kill on the Renegade. I couldn't quite get to him. As I'm extolling the virtues of this thing's speed, you'll notice that I'm not quite getting to the shots. But when you're trying to chase down damage with things like Barosks and other faster tanks, that can be very difficult. Thinking if I come around this corner, I might get a shot on the Lancet. I should have ignored him. I should have known he was going to get away, so we switch back over and head off this way. The guys in the hill are still beating up everything. There goes the Vipera. I mean, look at that. You just swing the tank around. You don't lose a whole lot on the dispersion from moving it. I'm thinking I might get another kill here, but not going to quite get there. Just swing around in that nice dispersion. Remember, I'm running the IA, the Bounty IA on this thing. And it comes at you with a 0.33 dispersion. So those kinds of shots where you're moving with a casemate, and that's one of the biggest weaknesses of a casemate, is moving the whole hole. You get those big blooms, and when they're running around with high 3s and low 4s or even higher, mid 4 dispersion numbers, it causes a whole bunch of misses. But with this thing, nice little tight circle. Look at that. Just doesn't even bother with it. Try to ram this guy and get a little bit of damage. Not quite enough oomph to take him down. Just keep pushing up there and hoping to maybe scrape a few more hit points out of that. 3,747. Now that's a small city map, so it doesn't take a whole lot to get around it, but I just wanted to show you that with a bounty turbo on this thing and a base 40 kilometers, no problem, man. You can get around. Bit of a trend item, I guess. Here we are on Himmelsdorf. Didn't realize actually two of my examples were Himmelsdorf, but since these are the only ones I saved, this ends up being a fairly high. I want to say this is a 1,300. Yeah, 1,335. I don't know how I got spotted there without seeing the guy. Must have just had his spotting point on the other side of the rubble over there. Yep, there they are. 1,335 assist. Not assist. That would be awesome. 1,335 experience. Ends up being a class 1 on this one. So as you saw with the stats, people are doing quite well in this thing. I didn't look at the requirements. Probably it was on that chart somewhere nearby. I think it's another table that gives you the requirements for Ace Mastery. Just sneak a shot. Look at that. You just got to love the dispersion on that thing, man. The nice tight dispersion. I just kind of picked the upper part of the side of the hole and it went right where I wanted it to. And just notice how tight the dispersion circle is. That's what she's... Never mind. Well, I mean, what are you going to say? We went up to the top. We're on Himmelsdorf. No business going on right there, so I'm going to change. I do have to watch the Skoda T27. If he dies, the old canary in the coal mine trick right there. If he dies, I'm going to have to turn around. The IS-6 is definitely trying to bait these guys. And I'm going to sit here because I'm hoping they do something like this. Right into the turret, folks. Right? So 290-something pin, I believe, with the gold round. Off to the side of the old mutant's turret. And you, too, with a little bit of a high roll, can put some damage on him. IS-3 is getting nukified. Shows me his side trying to get out of there. Notice the reposition, guys. That's why you got to like it. A T-28 would not be able to do that. All right, a T-28 backing out from the upper part, trying to turn around and go all the way to where I was, would have taken at least another half as much time, if not about twice as much time. So you got to like the speed on this thing. Now, we lose my buddies up here, and I'm thinking, well, this is no bueno. Although now a guard pushes up. Okay. Looks like things are going a little bit south for us, so we're going to have to try to get a bit of damage here. And it's time to turn this thing into more of an assault TD, right? We got to make something happen. We'll come around this way. What do we got? Oh, there's a feller there. And he's not paying attention. That's always nice. Look for opportunities like that. That spot is fun to shoot people, but you often can be surprised, like I just did to that guy. This dude is not really paying attention either. If he is, there's not a lot he can do because he's getting the old sandwich. Here's the hold down trick. See if this Udez can get it. Oh, he disappeared behind a bush. So there you go. All right, so I take that shot. We'll just nuke him, and we'll push in on the 14.5. So we've cleaned up stuff up here. I'm going to push across so I can keep covered up with that rubble pile. And we'll try to find these dudes. Now he's making a runner. Try to track him. Don't quite get there. Oh, looks like I did. And we find the other guy. Now I'm going to back out so we can't get an easy shot on my lower plate. We'll nuke him. Nice. And yes, we are spamming the gold. Well, 3,106 damage. Now we got to think about this for a second. We won this. Do we need to come boiling off this hill into the backfield? No, let's see. Well, okay, maybe. There's an Emil right there. Oh, he dove off. Fine. Let him do that. Oh, what about this RHM? Is he paying attention? Certainly not. Oh, look at the nice accuracy on that gun. Very comfy. We do eat a shot from the burr. We'll back up here. We don't want to let him have another shot. And all of a sudden we're down to an Emil and a Barras. So just kept on swimming. Keep on swimming. 3,116 damage. 239 assists. And we've got 5 kills. Very nice. We got the guard coming with us. We got the prototype pushing in. This gets a little spicy here. I was kind of hoping these guys would stick with me a little bit more. The two already are going into defensive mode. They know they're being hunted by a Barask. Good news is he has very few hit points, so with a little luck, they might be able to shotgun that guy. I don't want to walk right into the Emil, but I also don't want the Emil and the Barras to get kind of organized and get together. But all of a sudden we find the Emil has turtled up in that little corner. So guard has done us a solid and found this guy. Now we got to get in here. So between me and the Proto, if we can avoid one of us getting clipped out quickly, should be able to take this guy down. Now I'm the only... Oh, okay, he went that way. Great. I thought he was behind me. Notice I checked my 6 and he was gone. I'm like, oh crap. You actually went around the other way. All that means is we're going to have to wait a little longer. My problem with it, what he's doing, is now he's isolated, right? If the Barras shows up, he's in trouble. And as soon as he gets lit by the Emil, and I'm very surprised that Barras wasn't somewhere around. Oh, there he is. Great. Maybe he is going to... Oh, he hid. He hid. Okay. And I decided right then that I had to go in and kind of find the Emil and try to get the Prototype and the guard to come in and help me. At the time, though, I was very surprised he had that many hit points. I know that's what it showed up there, but I wasn't remembering what his hit points were, and I thought maybe he'd taken a couple more hits, and I'm like, oh, crap. I am easily defeatable by him. If he'd have just come around the corner and put 3 into me, it's over. Maybe even 2 would have done it. So I went a little bit too close and got lit, and really he needed to push out right there, and then he decides he needs to. I'll come out. I actually get away. He doesn't take the shot. That's very helpful. So I have traded 1 for none. The guard puts a shot into him. He puts one into the guard and gives me an opportunity to sneak one, and that just gets right into the edge. And now I know the Baraska's behind me, so we'll spin around. Can we get a reload? We got about a 9-10 second reload. We do. The Proto says, all right, I'm just going to go get the kill. He zings around. Oh, just man, that gets shotgun. Shotgun in the face. You never saw it. The Barras got crushed by the 40. Now, good on them, man. Good on. Look at those well, I'll call them TDs. Why not? We'll call the arty. In this case, they turned into triangles, and they got on their horses and helped us win. 6 kills, 3,848 damage, 643 assist for a Class 1 at 1,335. Got one more example for you. Last example, I want to show you brutalizing some lower tiers, and this is one of the places where this thing just becomes a monster. When you start beating up on tier 7s and 6s, it's a little bit like things like the Defender or the 703 too. I'm not saying it's a direct analog, but the idea being that you have some mobility, some armor, and a decent gun, or at least a high alpha gun, in terms of, you know, those don't have very accurate guns. But it can be absolutely brutal at this tier where you're getting some bounces off the armor, you have some mobility, and you have a big gun. It can be rough for the lower tier guys. So we are here on Himmel's Lakeville Dorf, and I'm just like, Skoda, let me knock this thing down. Oh boy, here we go. We just, boom. There's that gun handling, guys. You got that Bounty IA. You start at a .33. Bounty IA, chuck some food on there, which I don't have. The gun is brutal. I mean, I'm telling you what, man, it is an absolutely monstrous gun for this tier. And like I said, you start taking on same tier, or thanks, dude. That was great. Thanks for that right there. All right, fine. We'll use the armor. We'll back out. And the poor chieftain just gets crushed down to 30 hit points and dies. I'm like, come on, boy. Get out of the way. Ooh, there we go. So we'll just try to shoot a shot into his hole. Couple bounces right there because he's just not aiming quite right. I didn't get anything out of it. I did bounce. 4202 is out in the open making a mistake. Okay, fine. I'll eat a shot from a 15A just to come out and give you a little bit of that right there. 485. We'll back out. I mean, it's like a walk in the park right now, guys. Like any casemate, you want to avoid getting surrounded. You want to avoid getting tracked. I have an example of that on Miserable Monday a week or so ago where I poke out over and get immediately tracked. Casemates are very vulnerable to that. But if you're able to work a position like this, come out and get shots on tanks that just can't handle the beef. Look at that, 497. What have I rolled? 497, 45. There's one high roll, 515. I mean, theoretically, this thing can drop 600 damage and some change. Oof, 532. I mean, that just hurts, guys. That just hurts. That just a brutal monster of a gun in the right situation. You know what? 298, is that what it is with the pen? I will say when you do face the 298, when you do face the tier 10s with a lot of armor, you're not going to lull pin the thicker armor. You're going to have to work on weak spots. You're going to have to be more careful, as you would with any tier 8 against a tier 10. Look at that, just whatever, right into his side. There's that little angulation trick, the backup trick where you throw some angle on it from your casemates. Always a good plan. Okay, so let's just talk about that real quick. I won't stop it. Notice that I have used my kit, and I'm not that interested in going around corners and letting them just get a free track before I get my gun online. So I will be a little bit careful. It's nice to have the Carnarvon with me because he's got that DPM that's crazy. He'll get in there and add all kinds of shots in there. This guy sneaks around the corner. He looks like he's probably dead. I'm at 3,466. Could have swung down around the corner and gone after him, but now I'm thinking, hey, let's go start beating up these guys that are sitting back here. I didn't realize that building was in the way. I don't usually come around that corner, but the situation was looking very nice. Tiger 1's pushing in. No. Okay, so not seeing that. So let's just keep going. Really, I wish I had just continued up this way to begin with, but I thought I might get some sneaky shots. This guy's going to eat some HE. 360. You know what's funny about that? Think about this a little bit with your casemates, or with your higher alpha, not casemates, but with your higher alpha tanks. When you're thinking about, ooh, HE soft targets, that's all well and good, but there's a large variability on HE, and if it hits the wrong spot, you can really do a whole lot of nothing. And this thing has a 500 alpha. Based on the hit points of these two artillery, I didn't really need to even go to HE. It was pretty much an assured destruction with the AP shot. Just something to think about. M12 gets killed. Sort of expecting one of these dudes to be around the corner, but they're not. Su-130 has run all the way back there by the building. I'll just cut low. I do like this approach down low if there's not anything really at the corner there. Tiger 1 has sort of proved that they're not just sitting there, and this guy's getting absolutely hammered. Should have known. I should have pickled that one off just for GP. Centurion 5-1's made it all the way around the map, so he did eventually get to push through the Valley of the Noobs. I didn't look at it that closely. I don't think we sent that much to the Valley of the Noobs on this one. This dude's got 1 hit point. Gonna try to sneak one on him here. Nope, never mind, didn't do it. Now the Progetto, he's got, what, 3 or 4 shells? Can't remember at this point. I think it's 3. So he could absolutely maul me. I don't want to just go walk out there and let him put 3 in and then have the other guy come out with his pew-pew gun. So we'll just carve up here into the edge. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to get to the hit points because he's doing a nice job of covering up right there. Now, here's this gun just going to, bam, whatever, just right through. Gotta love it, man. You gotta love it. Type 59 decides to just go in there. I'll just auto-aim this dude. We'll put another shot on the run. Look at that. I know I've gone on about it. I'm telling you, though, the gun is fantastic on this tank. The gun is fantastic. 4,487 damage, 681 assists, and 2 kills. Let's wrap it up. Well, what's the verdict on the Tier 8 Japanese casemate TD, the Type 5 Carriage? It's good, man. It's good. And I would say for you casemate guys, people who like to hang out towards the back or be more careful in their gameplay, or for whatever reason, you know, don't want to play light tanks or the Twitch kind of tanks and all that kind of thing, this is a really good tank for someone like that. Especially if that person wants to start to learn more of the mobility part of the game. It can snipe and sit back and be more careful, but it has the capability mid to late game with enough movement on it, and plus the accuracy of the gun to get around the map and make things happen late and mid game. So that will help you, that if you can survive into that situation, which a lot of casemate players do, but they run into the problem that the casemate really doesn't have that much mobility or flexibility, so it's hard to kind of move around the map and affect the game the way you might want to late game. This tank will do that, it can do that, and it will help you learn some of that gameplay and maybe even get you to move out into the medium and heavy tank regime, and maybe not hang out in the back as much. I like this tank, man. I think it does a really nice job of a lot of things in the game that win. Repositioning, moving, some armor, and just the accuracy. Really, to me, it's a bit overtuned. I wouldn't say it's OP. I would say it's overtuned, and a lot of that has to do with the gun. I think, though, if you nerfed the gun, it doesn't really then do what it was kind of designed to do in the game, that's unfortunate, right? Really, if you nerfed the gun, it would probably drop pretty dramatically because the rest of the tank is pretty average overall. That's my assessment. Slightly overtuned, quite good. If you're a casemate guy, I think you're going to love this tank. And it can, I think, help the casemate guys maybe learn a little bit more about mid to late game repositioning because it just has that capability. That's all I've got. Let me know what you think about the Carriage, what I am calling the Carry, because it definitely can do that, down below in the comments. Again, apologies that I didn't get this thing out earlier, but it be what it be, my friends. Get one if you're interested in the Japanese TD line to start training up your crews. That thing should get dropped pretty soon. It will be really fascinating to see how close this thing is to the Tier 8 tech tree. I doubt very, very much that the tech tree is going to be anywhere near as good because this thing's pretty dang good. All right, guys, that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your support of the channel. As always, we will see ya.